We'll take few questions. Say it again. So we'll take more questions. Just tell me, just state the question and tell who do you like to answer that question. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, that's gentleman. You can use this mic.
Hi Bob, this is Sarang. We met at a Thai event in Pune some time back.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is regarding the slides that you showed. You mentioned that the first slide you talk about, what other CMOs are using. But what about startups who don't have a user base? How can they talk about the initial?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So the question is, I don't have any customers. How do I put up that first slide? So what I would do is I would use an Imagine a World slide. And I would put a picture of your target buyer right in the middle of that and say, imagine a world if you could do this, and this, and this, and this. Right? And then I would go into, market dynamics. And I've used that successfully for a number of our customers, that startups that don't have any clients yet. So again, it's a provocative opening. It gets them thinking, oh yeah, man, geez, that would be great. Tell me more. And I found it's an interesting way to actually begin an introduction that'll get you an audience with your target.
You mentioned that you talked about different CIOs.
Yeah.
And we have to position our company in certain way. So do we change the pitch depending on the CIOs in front of us, or stick with our, own the corner or own the problem?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question is, if I'm going after the COO market, and there are 3 or 4 different CIO types, to have to change my message every time? The answer is no. What I would do is focus on one type of CIO. Take one of those 3, for example. Maybe take the forward-leaning one, if you're a startup, right? The one that has experimentation and likes to do that, and narrowly focus on that one. And that's where you'll get your initial set of customers. And then you can broaden after that. But I find that it's focus, focus, focus is the key. Focus on a single buyer, generally. Have a single message, and that's the best way to drive revenue growth and help a company take off. Yeah.
My name is Sujata, and I'm also a branding and marketing positioning consultant, I dare say, like yourself. My problem is not that I don't agree. I agree with practically everything that you've said. The problem is that when you actually put this in front of one of your clients, they have a really hard time giving up stuff and choosing a niche to own or a problem to own. So do you have any recommendations as to how you go about actually letting clients know that if they don't do this, they'll die? They don't believe it. There are enough examples of people who don't die, even though they haven't differentiated.
I think that's a good. I think that's one of the big problems in the technology industry. Everybody gets so excited about their technology, and like I said, I show up. Raj, you probably have too, and show up and who's this for? Oh, everybody needs this, but and the problem is when you do really good positioning, you automatically take things off the table. In other words, we're going to focus on this means we're not going to do this. Even if the product can address this part of the market, it's focus, focus, focus. So typically what happens is a company, the way I've seen it work, is they'll sell the first 10 customers, and they'll end up with one of just about everything. But at some point they have to sit there and go, well, I think I see some patterns in there. 3 or 4 of these customers seem to have a similar problem in a similar environment. That's who we're going to focus on. We're going to make that our Mary, even though we can solve all these other ones, and that's who we're going to focus on. But that's the hardest thing to do, is because when you focus, you automatically leave something off the table. But all those logos that I showed up here, the big valuations, all those companies started out narrowly focusing on a very, very specific niche and a customer, and they knew them really well, and they solved a big problem for those customers.
Any question?
So, just to add to that, sometimes it may be worth asking them to just try out with 2 or 3 other people and ask them the difference between the focus and the not focus. Right? Basically, you say, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Ask them, make 3 phone calls here. Make 1 phone call to somebody else. What's the difference? Because otherwise, sometimes people will say, oh my God, I might have left a gold mine or a diamond mine somewhere, right? So you just make them realize and actually feel the difference. Was it easier to sell to this market? Was it easier to sell to that market? And once they do it, they start believing in you.
Yeah, either of you guys can answer this question. With the advent of social media and the extensive online presence that people can actually experience now, why is it that despite knowing your Mary, I mean you targeting your audience really well, why is it that brands are not able to position themselves accurately or tell a story in action?
Yeah. See, from my viewpoint, social media, I tweet, I blog and everything, right? So for me, nothing fundamentally has not changed. Social media has not changed. Only the amplification factor that has changed. If it is good thing, you can amplify it. If it is bad thing, even that amplifies better. So everything that has been done, social media has to be used as an amplifier and nothing else. Because fundamentally nothing has changed. The medium has changed. And if you don't change, if you don't position well, because of social media, something else automatically will not get positioned right. So still you need to build an awesome product. Still you need to tell a great story. Social media will just help.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have two questions actually. The first question is, if I'm a startup couple of years old, I do have some existing clients. So I take your repositioning exercise and relaunch the reposition the product, right? How do I make sure my existing client, should I do an additional message or saying that my existing clients are assured that it's the same brand image just being repositioned? That's the first part of the question. Second question is, if I'm a company which is launching multiple products, so one I have a lower end, low priced model and I have a premium segment. Both offers value to the customers, but I'm going to tell two different stories, but I should, under the same brand image or same company, how do I ensure that both the set of customers feel they get the maximum value out for their money?
That's one of the most difficult things to do is if you have an install-based set of customers and you decide to change directions or position a little bit differently. But I think, first off, you have to set them up as a separate audience to communicate with them. Communicate, unless you truly want to leave them behind. But if you want to keep them in their cash cow and revenue stream, you don't want to upset that. That's vitally important. You set them up as a separate communication audience and you communicate with them. But also what I do is take customers on a journey. And you can't run away from your heritage. So the reason, I always put, I kind of rewrite history and say, oh, the reason we did this is because we're really, really good at this. Now we're just taking it to the next level. We're not leaving them behind. We're just taking all the great things that you love about us and we're extending that. And there's a journey that we're going on and we can take you on or you can stay where you want to. So I always include them in my new story, if that's possible. The other thing is, it's very interesting right now. I think, excuse me, because of subscription models, it's fundamentally changing the relationship and marketing and everything. It's no longer B2B or B2C. It's really become B to any. And I think what I'm seeing is a lot more companies have a blended sales model where they got a friction-free, almost e-commerce model. They might have a channel that's focused maybe on SMB, some channel that's focused on the really big companies, and they got a different pricing model and packaging model actually for each one of those different segments. And but I think the message generally has to be pretty much the same. It can be spun, right? But I think what happens is if you have three different messages, then you're not going to stand for anything. So stand for one thing. Oh, the benefits might be different here versus here versus here, but overall our message is identical across all those segments.
So I'll take two more questions.
Hi, my question is for both of you. How do you compete with an imaginary product which could be like an ideal product in the mind of the customer? I'll give an example. Like I go to a movie website, so whenever I talk to people that it's a movie website, everyone almost asks me, the 7 out of 10 people ask me, oh, is it a place where you can download movies for free? And by that statement itself, you're almost like positioned out of the market because that's almost illegal. And when you say, no, you cannot do that actually, but you can do a lot of other things. You can find information about movies, you can do almost everything about movies. and they're always disappointed because people want to download movies for free. So it's like an ideal utopian product which you cannot provide to the customer. So how do you differentiate or create a positioning for a product like this?
I think I'll answer this question and also say in general, for most of the people who are building startups, the work does not begin once you build the product. Its work actually begins once you start conceptualizing the product. I want to build something like this. So while you are thinking, maybe I should build the product, you have to start highlighting the problem that this product is solving, and start having conversations with target audience and say, this is the problem. Do you think there is a really problem here? And just ask them. If they say, no, you cannot start hating them. You just say, listen to them and see, there may not be a really problem here. And once you identify that the problem is there, then you start having the next level of conversations. I think, what are you doing to solve the problem currently? In your case, movie-related website, you have to start asking audience, if they really have that problem, how are they solving it? It will not be that the one big way is the status quo. They may not be doing anything. Which in that case, even if your new site comes up, they may still not do anything because they're not doing anything anyway. So it's a lesson there. So if they're doing something, you start looking at, how is your product or offering or service or whatever it is different, and then start having the next level of conversation and say, if I do build this, would you pay for this? Unless it is another model where we will make money from ads and all those things. But otherwise, they have to clearly say, yeah, I would love to buy this. The litmus test is simple. As soon as you say the product exists, people should be asking, when is it available? I want to buy it. If that kind of a reaction is not coming, we have to go back to the drawing board and see, what can I tell? What story can I tell? When they tell the story, I said, if this product is all, I'll buy it now, kind of thing.
Can I? Sure. Yeah, this is for Bob or Raj, and it's kind of related to the previous question. The spaces payments, we know there are problems in the payment space in India, and it's not great. There's 20 to 30% payment transaction losses. But we really I'm finding it really hard to create a positioning for merchant customers, for example, right? Who would actually be willing to pay that 0.5% or 1% more, because we're like way lower than the US, right? It's 2.5% or whatever in the US, and it's like 1 and 1.5% in India. To actually create something that gives that greater reliability. They're like, hey, yeah, we probably are losing a lot more on our top line, but by nature, I don't want to pay more than that 1.5%. So it's a really hard, positioning to create something more reliable. How do you go about that?
Well, I think, we. That was the answer.
You got the answer.
That probably involves a lot more discussion, but I think I guess the short, pithy answer is you got to change the conversation, right? The conversation's on a buying criteria of this, and you have to switch it over here. And I think what's going to be required is place that, say, because something's got to be happening in the world out there that would make them think differently. But I think you've got to become an advocate for there's a new issue or a new problem that's facing these buyers. That because of the market dynamics that are happening, for them to stay in business, it's no longer this is important. This is really important. This is the next big, hairy issue, and the forward-thinking companies are actually looking at it from this viewpoint. And I think it's going to be an education process, but I think that's what's going to be necessary for to shift the buying criteria from where it is today to your advantage. Yes.
That ends the session. Thank you very much, Raj. Thank you, Bob. Really, really appreciate your time and flying all the way from Silicon Valley to explain. Just a token of gift from NASSCOM. Thank you. Thank you.